Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this evening. So this is I call it the Double Your Doors Second Suite Investing webinar. So this is going to be both an introduction and also a good refresher to some of you who are already familiar with the strategy. So we're going to get started on time. We have a decent number of participants right now. There looks like there's 15 of you, so that's definitely a manageable group. There's probably going to be a few latecomers, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is just because of feedback sometimes that we get from the mics, we're going to just keep you guys muted for now, if that's okay. And then if you have any questions, if you can type it in. And what we'll do is at the end of the webinar, I'll promise to keep it under 1 hour, so we'll be done before 9 o'clock, is I will address any questions that you have, either something that is specific to a project that you're either working on, something you're interested in looking at, or, just a general question. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so so this is an introduction to the strategy using the second suite profit formula that many of my clients for over 200 projects in the past several years have used themselves successfully. So let's get started. So here's the big takeaway for this webinar, and it's something that I truly believe in and has been proven over and over again, that applying the second suite profit formula to existing homes is the single best investment vehicle for new or experienced investors to really kickstart cash flow and gain wealth in real estate. Now, obviously, there's different ways to invest in real estate. There's different size and scope, but second suites are the ones that is very accessible from a skill level as well as from a financial level for most investors. One of the reasons why I put together this new presentation is because really of a major paradigm shift that's happened for myself, a lot of the investors around me, because of the skyrocketing rents that we're seeing everywhere. And at the same time, the much higher quality of tenants and other occupants living in second suites throughout every major city and town in the province. This presentation is not intended to give you, really nitty-gritty details on how to go about doing the legal suite. There's a ton of information on that. A lot of you probably already have this 8-point checklist. If any of you don't have this, let me know, and I can definitely send that to you. This presentation is intended to show you the incredible opportunities now available and is an overview of some of the steps to take advantage of it. Now, before I get too deep into it, I want to address a few things which I know many people struggle with. These next few slides are sort of geared towards some of the folks that may be newer to real estate investing. But even for more experienced investors, myself included, I've invested close to 15 years now. A lot of this is a good reminder for some of the challenges that we face. I certainly face it all the time, even though I've been investing for close to 15 years. Now, there's often a lot of noise around us on TV, online, social media, and even people around us, such as family and friends, that, there is that bias towards negativity. And this is because negativity sells more attention, and we are in the attention economy. As we all know, we're all sort of addicted to our phones and things like that. And, that's not to say that, it's all rainbows when it comes to investing. There is risk. And what we're trying to do is mitigate risk. We're trying to be conservative, but at the same time be real. And so that's why we have to really be careful about the information. Generally speaking, there's good information that could be positive and negative, but generally speaking, there is a bias towards negativity. That's sort of what I've seen in my experience. The truth is there's a lot of forces out there wanting to keep you in the rat race. It's not a grand conspiracy, but it's really just a lot of money to be made with big institutions wanting you to buy into their products and basically keep you, spinning in the hamster wheel. Okay, they want you to work, buy into their prepackaged investment products where most of the money has already been made, and they don't really want you to invest in your own real estate and create your own wealth because, quite frankly, they don't get a cut. And this is not a knock on anybody working in the financial industry. A lot of you are, I don't, but a lot of family and friends, they do, and it's really just sort of a system thing, and it's evolved over many years, right? So when you take control and you invest in real estate, that's where you actually can force value, and this is stuff that we're going to be talking about. So as we know, there's a lot of information out there. For the most part, a lot of the investment experts out there are not wrong, but I find that they tend to, make things a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. What I'm here to tell you is that second suite investing is actually a very simple and proven strategy for cash flow. That's been, in my experience, incredibly more effective in the past several years, especially due to the high rental prices that we're seeing. And I think that it promises to present even greater opportunity. There are many of you who might think that, any type of real estate investing is risky, let alone something where you have to get permits, deal with the city, go through renovations. I'm personally very risk averse, but also realize that you don't get anywhere by sitting on the sidelines. And this is why I love the second suite strategy. You're adding a ton of value in cash flow, so you're as protected as you can be, even if there's a downturn in the market. So even in a bad economy, homes with well-built legal second suites are in very high demand. So I'm here to put those fears to rest because you can definitely do it. It has been proven over and over again by many of my clients. A lot of them started out as rookies and now have used this strategy many times over. So you just need the right system, which is what we're going to get into. Okay, so ultimately, I know many of you have a dream to create enough cash flow to allow you to do the things that you love and the work that you're passionate about. It's not about, retiring and sitting on a beach all day. Although if you like doing that, that's, you're definitely going to be able to do that. But a lot of it for most people is really finding that flow of things that they like to do pretty much every day. So the beauty with second suites is that you also contribute greatly to the community by adding high quality housing into the marketplace, which definitely, we're in desperate need of for more housing. So I'm going to shift gears here a little bit and discuss a bit on the opportunity landscape. And, these are the driving factors making second suites and other housing intensification strategies such a great investment. So the first thing is rapid urbanization. We have over 300,000 immigrants moving into Canada, with more than a third, 132,000 coming into Ontario alone. And a vast majority of them are moving into urban areas. And this doesn't even include the in-migration that we're seeing in this province. So, people moving in from other provinces and from rural areas. Excuse me. Second is government policy. Okay, so due to economic, environmental concerns, the official policy is to intensify the existing urban areas. Here in the Greater Toronto area, we have a green belt surrounding the greater region where development is prohibited. And the other thing is we have a bill that was passed about 8 years ago, Bill 140, which is Ontario's on the Ontario government's mandate requiring every municipality to have policies in place to allow second suites. Thirdly, the cost of real estate is out of reach for most middle income earners, which means many median income folks are resorting to second suites as a good housing option in desirable neighborhoods. And this in turn leads to the last item, which are rents. Okay, and this is what we talked about earlier, that rents have just gone really high. From houses to condos to second suites, rents have gone up really high everywhere. And basically, developers cannot build quick enough. This is creating a housing crisis. So the question that remains is, how do we profit from it and at the same time help with housing? Okay, so this is something that I truly believe in. And so here's what we're going to talk about in terms of the strategy. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. Really, it's going to be a housing intensification revolution from the ground up, really at a grassroots level, one house at a time. here in Ontario, we have 2.8 million single-family detached homes where we can apply this strategy. And this doesn't even include semi-detached houses and townhouses, okay? So we start with second suites, which again, the legislation has allowed pretty much every single family zone to have these types of units. But then there's other types of more creative options that we can get into, okay? So, here's an image of a second suite, and there's potentially triplexes and fourplexes, okay? So that house that you see there in the second image, that was a single family home in Midtown Toronto that got converted to a triplex. Even fourplexes we're seeing. And then there's many other creative housing options, okay? So laneway houses. This is an image that I took when I was in Vancouver earlier this year, and they have very progressive strategies for laneway houses, and that recently got implemented here in Toronto as well. And then other things like detached coach houses, accessory units, garage conversions, and then other infill developments as well, okay? So, these are the types of projects that current home builders and developers are not getting into, quite simply because the scale does not work for them, okay? It's not, the economies of scale does not work for them to go individually to sites, but they work really well for us smaller investors who can, take advantage of the smaller scale, create a cookie cutter system for ourselves that can be repeated. Okay, so again, we're going to start small, and second suites are the low hanging fruit and where the opportunities are right now, and it's proven to be profitable. And that's the thing that we're going to start at. And as many of you know, I do have a masterclass that I will be launching in January. As a matter of fact, this is going to be probably one of the last webinars that I'm going to be doing to discuss it. So at the end, I'm going to go over that. And really, it's called the Second Suite Profit Formula Masterclass, but it's really just Second Suites is really just a start. All this other stuff that I'm showing you are things that are going to be available for you to take advantage of as well. And this is something that I'm doing myself, and I'll touch on that briefly in a bit. So the goal of this presentation is to show you the key steps to getting higher than average cash flow in real estate, start or grow your real estate portfolio, and ultimately help you succeed in real estate. Now, the content here is designed for both new investors, if you've never purchased any property, and for experienced investors, even if you have, let's say, 50 doors. If it's a new strategy, you're going to get a great deal of information tonight. If it's something you're utilizing already, your experience, you'll certainly gain some new insights as well. Okay, so how do we achieve this? Okay, so you hear me say a lot about the second suite profit formula. So what's this magic formula that I'm talking about? Very simply put, it's about finding the right property, applying the right financing techniques, and then doing a proper renovation and adding good tenants. So this ultimately translates into very high cash flow and long-term value growth for the property. Now, at first glance, this may seem simple and straightforward. Okay, there's nothing groundbreaking about finding the right property, doing financing, doing the right reno, and then filling it with good tenants, right? But the devil's in the details, and we're going to get into this. Okay, so I realized that I didn't provide a proper introduction for myself, at the beginning. So now's a good time to tell you a little bit about us, our company. Sorry, there's a little bit of background noise here. I'm just going to mute a couple of people here, if that's okay. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I started second suite editions in 2015, and now we're a team of 4 here in the GTA. To date, we've designed and consulted on over 200 projects in Toronto, Hamilton, Kitchener, St. Catharines, Barrie, and a few other cities. We've recently expanded to Eastern Ontario and now have partners serving Ottawa, Cornwall, and Kingston. Okay, so our next target is Western Canada as well, and we're going to be expanding with partnerships there as well in Alberta and BC. Back up a bit here and share my story and path on how I got here. I studied architecture in university and got into home inspections and training home inspectors. and then finally became a house designer a few years ago, which is how I started Suite Editions. I myself have been a longtime real estate investor. Since 2006, I've been an investor. With the exception of student housing, I've gone through the whole gamut of rental strategies, investing in pre-construction condos, rent-to-own, standard single-family, flipping, and even short-term rentals using Airbnb. Some of it was successful and other times not so much. Okay, but it was all a learning experience for me. Currently, I'm also involved in some infill housing development projects with a couple of partners by the name of Steve Ford and Charles Wall. We have a website dedicated to it, and it's appropriately named infilldevelopments.com. So I was quite happy that I was able to get that domain. Currently, we have 3 projects on the go and 3 more projects in the pipeline, with one of them being a 30-unit mixed-use housing and commercial building that's going through city approvals at this time. So fingers crossed. So the stuff that you see here, these are definitely not second suites, although in 2 of these projects that you see on the screen, we are incorporating legal second suites into the development. But these are a spin-off of the housing intensification strategies that we're seeing, okay? Again, with second suites being the low-hanging fruit for both accessibility and profitability. The picture that you see on the top left, that was something that was completed this summer in St. Catharines. We took 2 lots, divided it into 4, and was able to build a total of 8 units. The one on the bottom left there is a Hamilton semi-detached home that's under construction right now. We're under approvals for splitting a single lot to 3 lots in St. Catharines near the GO station. And then the big one here is a 30-unit mixed-use residential and commercial building in Hamilton. And this really, again, comes down to the intensification, but it also complies with a lot of the new urbanism strategies that we're seeing out there, where you're trying to make things more pedestrian-friendly, transit-friendly, and trying to minimize people's use of cars, right? There's definitely nothing wrong with cars from getting from a far distance to another city, but a lot of times, car use is unnecessary. So if you can design places where, people can work, live, shop, and have easy access to transit, there's less requirements for cars. So these are kind of the strategies that we're seeing. So I want to share with you how I stumbled onto second suite investments. And, it was a really big aha moment for me. And ironically enough, it didn't happen with an investment property. I bought my own principal residence in 2009 in Toronto, in Scarborough. It was a backsplit home, okay, which is the one on the top here, and it's actually still the house that I'm in. A year after I bought 2 investment properties in Hamilton, one of which was a bungalow, the one that you see on the bottom right. I rented that whole house for $1,600 a month, okay, and keep in mind, that's the whole house. I was making a little bit of money in cash flow, but I thought that there had to be a better way. Now, in that same year, I decided to put a legal second suite in my own house, not to rent out, but for my own use. But after I completed the project, I looked at the rental market, and that was when a light bulb went on. I saw the potential rents for 2 legal units, even back 9 years ago, in terms of the possibilities. Now, I don't live in a really good neighborhood, but it's decent. It's got good schools, good shopping, good community centers. And I was able to see what the demand was for a well-built second suite. So that really was the big aha moment for me. I didn't implement the strategy immediately on the investment properties because the layout didn't quite work. So instead, I started teaching folks on how to do it on their own properties. From 2011 to 2015, I was pretty much doing for free as part of my job in home inspections. I was sort of educating other inspectors, our students, the real estate community. I was talking to the investment community as well. And it wasn't until 2015 I started doing actual consulting and house designs. And ever since then, we've helped homeowners and investors on over 200 projects, and we started seeing some really incredible results. So I was already sold on this back in 2011. Seeing the rents I could get on my own house. And I knew this is, one of the ways to build wealth in an accelerated fashion. But 8 years later, seeing the success of my clients and colleagues, this definitely has been solidified. Okay, so not to mention, the much higher rents that's happening in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton region. Now, in any real estate investment circle that you go to, you typically hear that wealth creation from real estate is three things. Okay, so you have the first thing is the mortgage pay down. The principal portion of the mortgage that gets paid down translates into equity gains, right? We all know that. There's market appreciation. Okay, so I'm not talking about appreciation as a result of you adding anything to the property. It's really just general market appreciation, right? A healthy market, a lot of people say is 3, 4, 5%, 6% maybe, and then something that's might be high to a point where it might be unstable is 10%, 20%, and quite frankly, in 2016, 2017, we were seeing things as high as 30%, and I think even higher than that in some markets. So that was obviously unsustainable. Okay, so this obviously varies depending on where you're investing. Many investors who have taken part in the market in the past 5-10 years have done really well. And then the last item is really the holy grail of investing, which is cash flow, which is this is the money that's going to allow you to actually have passive income that you can focus on building towards that financial independence. Now, unfortunately, this number has been dwindling because of the cost of real estate. Now, with legal second suites, you can really start to accelerate two of these items in this equation, which is the appreciation of the property as well as the much higher cash flow. Now, in terms of appreciation, it's more of an invisible appreciation, okay? And we're going to get to that in a bit. But in terms of the cash flow, that's something that you notice right away. So we're going to have a look at some numbers now. So I'm going to take a look at the investment profile of a typical single-family home in many of the markets that we're interested in. So examples would be, Hamilton, Brantford, Barrie, Kitchener, Oshawa, St. Catharines. And I know that there's always going to be some people that are saying, well, what about London? What about Mississauga? What about Peterborough? And, a lot of those definitely are valid. It's just, I may not have as much experience in some of those markets. So depending on which market you're in, you're probably looking at a typical single family starter home, in move-in ready condition. What I'm talking about is, the main unit. So in most cases, the bungalows would be the main floor. You're looking at a cost ranging between $400,000 to $500,000. Now, you might be able to rent out the whole house for around $1,800 to $2,400. At these numbers, you may be able to get some cash flow. But really, after all net operating expenses, the cash flow is going to be rather tight. Now, take that same home, and now we're going to add in a professionally completed, beautiful legal second suite at a cost of $80,000 to $100,000. Now we're getting rents for between, anywhere between $1,600 to $2,000 for the main unit. Okay. Now that's probably going to be less than what you would get for the whole house because whoever's living there now loses the basement. They may not get it for storage or that extra living space. But now you're getting between $1,200 to $1,600 for the lower unit. Okay, so overall, the sum of it, you're getting more than what you would get just for renting the whole house. But of course, you have to spend money to get it done, right? So the total that we're seeing now is in the range of $2,800 to $3,600 for total rent on one of these houses that are between $400,000 to $500,000 to purchase. So this translates to an extra $800 to $1,200 in rent. Now, this begs the question, is the extra $80,000 to $100,000 to do a proper conversion worth it to get the extra $800 to $1,200 a month? Okay, so that's a question that I'm posing to you. And the answer is definitely yes. Okay, so as a matter of fact, it's something that you probably, you can't afford not to do. Any loans that you take out to fund this rental will likely be paid off in under 10 years. After that period, the second suite just becomes a capital asset that's going to keep earning you money. Okay, so that's the beauty of it. And that's not to say that you have to wait 10 years. You can certainly use some of the equity gains and some of the appreciation for another property. Okay, but that's just if, let's say, you're just focusing on one property. So we're not making this stuff up. My clients are proof that this works. So we have countless clients who've implemented this strategy, and the numbers are excellent. So let's have a look at a few case studies. Here's one of my investor clients purchasing a home on the Hamilton Mountain for $409,000. This was actually a couple years ago in 2017. They got it just after the height of the market, around spring of 2017. So they spent $110,000 in renovations. This actually covered the upper unit as well. They ultimately got a total rent for both units at $3,145. So $1,745 for the upper unit, $1,400 for the lower. After paying the interest on their home equity line of credit, mortgage, and other expenses, they were still able to net over $500 in cash flow. Here's a second case study. This was a home in Kitchener. My clients were, again, they were able to luck out on this one with the price, purchasing this bungalow for just under $400,000, $390,000. I don't think you can get anything for under $400,000 in a market like Kitchener anymore. The good news is that the numbers still work great for properties well above that $400,000 mark. In this one, they spent $90,000 on rentals and ultimately got rental income of $3,100 plus utilities. So $1,700 for the main unit and then $1,400 for the basement. And after paying their loan interest, they're still able to net over $600 a month in cash flow. Our third case study, this is back in Hamilton. This was a recent acquisition and renovation. So my client was able to get this house off market. Okay, so you might have to be creative in finding the property. So, a lot of them are on market, but then some are off market as well. So you have to go through your network to see if there may be opportunities. He spent $70,000 renovating it, which is a very low amount in my opinion in terms of what the work is required. But he managed it. He managed it himself. Hiring all the individual trades, so he was able to save quite a bit of money. But obviously, there's time involved, right? Total rent he got was $3,300 plus utilities. Okay, so $1,700 for the main unit, $1,400 for the basement, and he got $200 to rent out his garage as a storage unit. Okay, so a lot of times you can be creative. People spend, they have a lot of stuff. They'll spend money on a self-storage facility, for example. Even just a 100 square foot self-storage can cost $150 to $200. So you can do these sort of creative things to really boost the cash flow. In this case, his cash flow was really high at $775. So the last example we're going to look at is one actually in Toronto. This was really an absolute home run, by any measure. I myself always considered Toronto to be only a market, where you speculate for property appreciation, not for cash flow. Okay, but I was wrong on that. It can certainly also cash flow if you apply the second street strategy. This semi-detached house was purchased also very cheap for $575,000. The total cost to do the renovation was $100,000. Total rents obtained were $4,500. Okay, so this is pretty insane. $2,500 for the upper unit and $2,000 for the lower unit. The investor used cash to fund this project, and he was able to cash flow close to $1,500 a month. But if you factor in home equity line of credit to fund the down payment and renovation, that obviously is not going to be that much. You're still looking at over $700 in cash flow. Whenever I do these cash flow analysis, I always like to include the cost to borrow, right? Because there's always opportunity cost with money. Whether you're taking it from cash, whether you're taking it because you're refinancing your property, or you're taking a home equity line of credit, not that many people have the money. But again, even if you have no money, there's opportunity cost in that. So that's why I like to include the cost of money as part of the expense, so that we can really determine what the net cash flow is at the end of the day. Now, the one thing that you'll notice with all of these projects, the one thing that they have in common is that they are, it's a very high quality finished product. you're getting good rents, you're getting good tenants, but you can't just slap a basement suite together and expect to get high rents, okay? You'll get somebody renting it. We know that for sure. But in terms of the amount of money and the quality of tenant, you might not get that if you don't spend the effort and the money to make it really nice, okay? So it must be very well built and legal. This one here, you can see you can see the before and after. They had an old suite here that was gutted and redone, and it's a very modern basement suite. Granted, this was near a subway station, near Warden Station, so that's why it fetched a higher rent, and it was very beautifully done. As a matter of fact, the tenant that lives here is actually an executive chef downtown Toronto. So, these are the kind of things that we're seeing with tenants. A lot of them can't afford $3,000 for a condo downtown. They have to resort to these. And the good thing about these is that now they have access to a backyard, they have a parking spot, a little bit more privacy. And a lot of people, they might have some kids that they want to put in the school, right? So getting that address is very useful as well. So keep in mind also that these case studies we showed you were very profitable. I'd be lying to you if I say that all of them turn out this way. Your mileage is going to vary depending on the purchase price, the rental costs, market, and the quality of the unit. But this is here to show you the possibilities. So if, let's say, you don't find the right contractor, or you purchase too high on the house, then you obviously may not profit as well. You can possibly even lose money, right? So you got to be careful. You have to find the right property. You have to get in at the right price. So I'm going to move on to discuss 3 key factors in your path to success when doing second suite investing. So the first is I'm going to address a common concern a lot of you might have about second suite as an investment vehicle, often centered around whether or not you can find a property that works. Okay, so I'm here to say that you can rest assured you can definitely find the property, but you will require some patience, and also you have to take the emotion out of it and really look at it from an objective standpoint. Number 2 is centered around a lot of the worries that many of you have around the whole process. Okay, so funding the investment, going through the permitting process, doing the renovation, finding the right tenants. Okay, so those are things that we teach as well. And item number 3 is not an action item, but it's really something that's very important for you to understand, which is that with legal second suites, it's a very high demand product in any market. You are forcing appreciation, but it's probably not something that you're going to see immediately. Okay, so I call this an invisible appreciation, and I'm going to explain that more in a bit. So let's elaborate on these 3 things. So I call them 3 key reveals. So reveal number 1 is finding the right property. Okay, so there are many houses, okay, that works for second suites. As a matter of fact, we mentioned that there's 2.8 million single family homes. It really comes down to very specific local bylaws, and often this is surrounded around parking issues, and then just some very small local bylaws. And we're finding that over time, the rules are getting more and more lenient. Okay, so the next thing really is finding the right price. Now, again, you have that checklist. Most of my clients look at that checklist when they're looking at houses. They make sure that everything checks out, and then it really just comes down to price to see if it works. The next part covers the whole gamut of the second suite investment process. This is typically the most intimidating part of it. Okay, so first is the funding. Most people access funds from their home equity line of credits, but there are other options such as property plus improvements by a lot of lenders, which is designed to roll renovation costs into the mortgage. Okay, and generally speaking, the limit for that is about $40,000, which is probably about half of the cost of your project if you were to do it brand new. And you usually have to actually in all cases, you have to pay for this and then get it reimbursed, okay? Which at least, you might be able to borrow some funds and then be able to get that back later on that you can use for, this project or another project. The next thing is the permitting process, okay? So you have to prepare an application with all the relevant permit drawings, including site plan, floor plans, elevations, cross sections, details, and all building specifications. In terms of renovation, what needs to be done will depend on the existing conditions of the basement space. Is it full gut? Is it a partial renovation? Or is it simply to change a few things to bring it up to current standards to, quote unquote, legalize it? And the last thing is filling both the main unit and second suite with tenants. Filling a 2-unit home is very different from a single home. Okay, there are many considerations in terms of the timing of the two. When you bring one in, you might be doing renovations while one tenant's already moving in. Discussions around the usage of space, and this includes any common areas inside. Is there a shared laundry? Is there a shared foyer? And then separation of utilities is very important. Okay, so this takes us to reveal number 3. And as mentioned, this is not an action item that needs to be executed, but it's a very important aspect of second suites that you need to understand and keep mindful of during the project. And that is the recognition of the fact that you are getting into real estate development, albeit at a small scale. Okay, so you can add an extra housing unit and you're creating great value. Now, most people think, well, it's just a basement apartment, right? It's just extra space in my house. I'm putting something extra. And traditionally, that's how it's always been done. But now, because of all the rules that have come on board, a lot of investors, and because of the market, we see that high quality of tenant moving in. So this really is now migrating over to a new housing option. Now, because this is getting mixed up with a lot of the kind of really bad basement suites that we've seen in the past, the lending industry and the appraisers don't recognize it, right? So they see that you spend $100,000 on the second suite. It's beautiful. You can get a high rent, but they look down the road and somebody with a basement suite with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen, theirs is priced as this much. So they're going to compare yours to that. It's a totally different product. And this is something that only you recognize because you are an investor and you're getting that cash flow. Okay. And so this is something that we're seeing. It's going to take the market some time to recognize that. And a lot of my clients, once they spend, $100,000 on the rental, they're not going to get that $100,000 back right away. A lot of times it takes several months. A lot of times it takes several years. But you're looking at it from a long-term perspective. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that invisible appreciation. This is, as we mentioned, as sophisticated investors, we certainly know the value of the home with a legal suite, as we know it can rent much higher because we don't have to worry about being shut down by the city or because of a complaining neighbor. A lot of times a homeowner will have a basement suite and they'll rent it out because they're keeping an eye on it and they may know the neighbors. The risk profile is a lot less. But if you're an investor, usually, you can expect that if something goes wrong, between your neighbors and one of the tenants, even the tenants themselves, a lot of times, if there's any disagreements between you and the tenant, they can call the city. And I've certainly had a lot of clients that have done that. Okay, so that's really a long explanation on something that really you want to keep mindful of during the whole process. And you can see that I have a picture of Monopoly there for those of you that play Monopoly. Because as investors, we know in the game of Monopoly, you're gaining wealth long-term through owning assets and collecting rent rather than, jumping in and out and buying and selling. Obviously there's merit to selling property, if it's underperforming a lot of times, or you have a better opportunity somewhere else. Generally speaking, you kind of want to minimize transaction fees, right? This is why I have that here. As a as an aside, I have a 6-year-old son that I recently got into Monopoly, and he loves it. I sort of go over and explain to him, all the properties that he can buy, and he's just totally addicted to it. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm teaching to my kids, and hopefully soon I'll have him collecting rent from me as well. Here's a picture of my kids. That's my son, Evan, and my daughter, Claire. They are standing in front of that project that we completed this summer with Lego Second Suites. So, this is the sort of stuff that I get excited about. It's kind of weird. Okay, so to illustrate the point about protection from market downturns, I like to use the example of a market that some of you might be familiar with, which is Alberta. Alberta's is really the canary of the coal mine when it comes to real estate downturns. 5 years ago, it was still a hot market. Ever since the decline in oil and gas, real estate has really suffered. I was over in Edmonton and Calgary last October, and I spoke with many real estate investors, agents, contractors. Basically, they told me that luxury condos, large homes, were still suffering and still in decline, but second suites are in good locations. We're still in high demand, and this comes down to the price point. A lot of people in a tough economy cannot afford to get into the higher priced products, and houses with second suites, becomes an even better option. So Alberta is a very good example of what you can expect if you're ever concerned about a market downturn. You can certainly feel comfortable that you'll be able to get, you'll still be more insulated than the rest of the market if you put in a legal second suite. Now, here in Ontario, we have a very diverse economy. It's unlikely that we'll suffer the same type of downturn as in Alberta, where their economy is primarily based on oil and gas. Here in Ontario, way more diverse, right? Finance, tech, healthcare, and this is really just to show you that if even in a market that like Alberta, where it can suffer downturns the way they have, second suites still do make sense. Because again, I'm very risk averse. I like to, everything that I do, I like to make sure that there's plan A, B, C, and D. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a second, and I'd like to ask you a question right now. Okay, so the question is, if you were able to follow the 3 items discussed, which is to find the perfect property, apply the correct financing, permitting, renovation, and tenant filling tools, and at the same time realize the tremendous value and appreciation that you're adding to the property, do you think you can be successful in real estate? Okay, and I really want you to think about that from a long-term basis, right? Okay, and that is sort of a rhetorical question. I think that you're going to say yes. I'm definitely going to say yes. And this is not something that you have to jump in and say that you have to buy 10 properties and do this. Okay, now as someone with a company that does design services, and I'm training people to do these, of course I'd like you to do more, because that means you're going to be successful, and I'm going to be able to benefit from it potentially as a service provider. But I don't think that's necessarily the right approach, right? I think slow and steady is a better way. There's a lot of investment groups out there that will say you need to get 7 properties in the next 24 months. And I see people do that. It's a race to get the number of doors, right? Because that's sort of the bragging rights, is to say, how many doors do you own, right? Because I've been to those real estate groups where you go there, you sit on that round table, you chit chat with people. And inevitably that question, that elephant in the room question, is how many doors do you have, right? And it's kind of like, well, I'm a new investor. I don't think that means anything. It really depends on your approach, what your long-term things. I personally feel that you should do it. Anybody should start slowly. As a matter of fact, if you don't own any real estate, if you don't even own a principal residence, I think you should buy a house for yourself, put in this legal suite. Maybe if you're okay and your family's okay with it, live in that second suite and then rent it out to somebody else, the main unit, and build up your wealth. Maybe a year later, 2 years later, you can buy that other property. And even if you were to do 1 of these a year, which is very manageable, I believe, if you do 10 of these in 10 years, you're going to be doing really well. And then 10 years after that, a big chunk of it is going to be paid off. Okay. So for a lot of the folks out there who are young, and even those my age, in their 40s, you can still do this and have a very good, comfortable retirement. So, I don't think it's necessary for you to sort of jump out and necessarily, follow a lot of these investment groups that tell you that you have to get 10 properties in 2 years. I don't think that's the right approach for everyone. Okay, so sorry, I went on a little bit of a rant there. Okay, so I'm going to just ask you guys a simple question now. How many of you are excited? Do I see any yeses? Has everyone fallen asleep? I know that I've just kind of get monotone sometimes when I talk about this stuff. And I talk about it all the time, right? All right, Tiago, you are excited. Okay, so, yep. Edmund, yep. Good stuff. I know that you guys are awake. Good. Hope you had that coffee. Okay, so this guy certainly is excited. Do you feel overwhelmed that, with the information that we've talked about, feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose? Actually, I Googled fire hose and I couldn't find any pictures, so I got this one instead, a fire hydrant. Okay, so it's impossible to show you everything. And, really this is more to get you inspired, to show you the possibilities. Like I said, we already have that checklist that you can look through to see if the property is a good fit. We cover a lot of the requirements with bylaws, building codes, and then some of the functional requirements as well. And as many of you know, I do have a masterclass that I'm launching in 2020, which is a detailed breakdown of the whole investment strategy and this profit formula that I talked about. So is it okay right now? What time are we? 8:45. So we have 15 minutes before 9. I don't think it's going to take 15 minutes. It's just going to take maybe about 10 minutes for me to go through. So is it okay if I spend 10 minutes to go through these with you guys? Okay. If I don't hear any no's, I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay. Awesome. All right. So, so I'm going to introduce the Suite Editions Second Suite Profit Formula Masterclass. This is an 8-week training program that is 1 hour per week starting on January the 8th. So that's a Wednesday evening. Now, obviously, it's not going to fit everyone's schedule perfectly. Some people might have something on Wednesday evenings or that time doesn't work for them. The good thing is that this is going to be, it's going to be live, but it's going to be recorded. So that if, let's say, you can only get to it on Thursday or can only get to it on the weekend, you can certainly do it over the weekend and then catch up for the next week. And if you still can't make the next week, you can just keep doing that. And all the content is going to be there for you. You're going to have access to our team, myself, for questions. Okay. So this course will be completed at the end of February at your own pace, which will be a perfect time for you to hit the spring market before everyone else does. As a matter of fact, you can get started even in January with all the good information that you'll be getting. Okay. So in this masterclass, we're going to cover the financing of the second suite, finding the perfect property, placing the offer, and the pre-close preparation. Okay. So this part gets overlooked a lot by a lot of the clients. So when I go out there and do talks, when I educate realtors, I say, this is what you got to do when you're placing the offer. This is what you got to do pre-close, all the preparation work to make sure it's a smooth conversion, or to at least mitigate the chances that it's going to go awry. Okay. So, in terms of the length of closing, what needs to be done, who you're bringing in, what sort of paperwork you need to prepare before the closing to ensure that you're able to submit permit applications, all that sort of stuff. The design of the suite, the permitting process, and then the application itself with the city, building that relationship with the city. I always recommend people build a relationship if they're going to be doing this long-term in a particular city, right? It's better that, generally speaking, I find it's better when people focus on one city, building that relationship, obviously with the city and then with local contractors, rather than spreading yourself too thin. Find a city that you like, preferably somewhere that's relatively close to where you live, and focus on building that relationship there, okay? And in terms of the renovations, that's going to be covered over 3 weeks, because that's usually the most work throughout the whole process, right? So there's renovations, phase 1, 2, and 3, and then the post-renovation things that need to be done, in terms of setting up things like garbage, mail, all that sort of stuff, documentation that's required, and then finally the renting out of the 2 units, and then potentially how to extract value. So what we're doing is we're taking all the experience, skills, and knowledge that we've gained in the past several years from over 200 projects and passing that along to you to help you succeed. Now, it's important to let you know that this course is suitable for new investors as well as experienced investors, who may own multiple properties. Everyone will get a high amount of value from this. Some of you might have questions as to whether or not this is right for you if you don't have any product, any projects on the go, or you don't have any property. But this is a good time to really understand this so that you'll be ready to hit the ground running when you do acquire property. Okay. So it's important to understand that this is not meant to cost you money. It will save you money in the short term and the long term. And each property, I feel that's going to save you thousands of dollars. And every time you invest, you're going to get a chance to save again and again. Okay. So I'm not going to waste any time. I'll tell you the pricing for this course immediately. It's retailed for $997. Now, I'm not going to charge you this. You probably guessed that, and I'm going to give you a better pricing. But before I do that, I want to show you a bunch of very valuable bonuses that I'm going to be providing bundled with this training program. So when I started, I had to create these systems and tools for myself and my clients, and I've refined it with my clients, in the past 200 plus projects. So with the bonus content that you're going to see coming up, I spent a lot of time and money putting a lot of this together. It is still in the process of getting completed, and these are going to be free for you for signing up for the masterclass. Okay, so I'm going to get into those items here. Sorry, I don't know why I have some scribbling on the screen there. Apologies for that. I must have pressed something. So please ignore that. Okay, so the first item, of course, is the masterclass itself. It's valued at $997. So it's an 8-week comprehensive online training, 1 hour per week starting in January. So the bonuses, okay, the first thing is a guide to address specific rules around 10 of the most common investing cities in Ontario at the moment. Okay, so in the list, we have Hamilton, Kitchener-Barrie, St. Catharines, Brantford, Toronto, Oshawa, Guelph, Peterborough, and Ottawa. So this specifically deals with local bylaws that we have experienced for these cities, in addition to some of their building code interpretations. Now, if you're interested in investing in one of these cities, this guide, valued at $100, is going to be incredibly useful. There's been a lot of changes recently, and we're going to be including in that as well. So, for example, in Toronto, they've allowed laneway houses, a lot of new rules surrounding that, and some of the other zoning that allows for higher intensity. Kitchener recently announced that in 2020, they're going to allow people to build coach houses in addition to houses with second suites. So you're looking at 3 units in one. Great opportunity there. And really, these are the kind of things that I'm seeing that's happening all over the place. And it's really because of the dire need for more housing. Okay, so that's going to be the first bonus item. Next is a guide that I put together specifically to outline the renovation process of a second suite. It has some additional information beyond the renovation component of the masterclass and can be used as a quick reference guide. So this guide alone can save you thousands of dollars during the renovation, and this was valued at $100. And that's part of the bonus package as well. I have a Suite Editions Facebook group. I actually just reactivated that and invited a lot of new people who have done recent conversions and had success. So you'll gain an access of this for starting very soon. We're going to get this up and running in about a week, and you'll get access to it for the remainder of the year and then also for all of 2020. You'll get immediate access to this group and start learning from others right away and start picking the brain of some of our already successful clients. I'm going to be in there addressing questions, posting new information specific to second suites, and again, addressing any questions that you have. Okay, so that's included. And then finally, this is something that a lot of people have asked for. We know how valuable good contractors and trades are. We've reached out to many of our past clients to ask them for contractor referrals. This Rolodex contains the valuable context in the trades successfully used by my clients. It also contains many trades which I've personally used myself. Okay, so that's valued $150. That's also yours. Something that's very fun and exciting happening in the spring of 2020, we'll be doing several on-site half-day training sessions at one of our second suite conversion projects. So you're going to see in person the best practices of an actual project. We're going to be sharing numbers in terms of the cost of the property, some of the costs for the renovation, and so that you can plan accordingly and potentially use some of the same strategies. Now, we're going to have several dates for this so that we'll accommodate your schedule as best as possible. Most of them will be on either a Saturday or a Sunday morning, okay? Because I know most people are busy. They still have to go to work. So you can choose which date suits you the best. After this on-site learning, we'll be having a networking lunch, which is included as well, where we can learn, socialize, and then, of course, enjoy a meal together, because that's what's the most fun about working together as investors, okay? So these are not, inflated numbers on products. These are actually going to be available for purchase on my website as individual products. Okay, so these are going to be bonuses that's part of the class. Okay, so quickly summarizing the total package, you have the second suite masterclass, $997, the city guide, $100, the renovation guide, $100, Facebook support group, which is $200 per year. The Trusted Contractors Rolodex, which is $150. The on-site training class, it's a half-day training with networking lunch, that's $200. And so if you add up all the items on this list, okay, it's valued at $17.47. And, as we know, 2 to 7 are bonuses. So that's, over $700 that is given to you for free when you sign up for the class. So as I mentioned, the class is $997. Now we have a early bird, which is available until November 15th for $797. Something that I didn't mention is that we already have 40 people signed up for this training. I'm probably going to cap it at around 60, just because I kind of want to make sure that we have the available resources to work with everyone and to address any questions that everybody has. So I think that that those spots are going to sell out pretty soon. So November 15th is going to be the deadline to sign up for the early bird pricing. And what I'm going to do today, and this is actually the last webinar that I'm going to be doing for a while, just because I'm going to get back and focus in on producing the content, making sure that's very high quality and that it's going to be ready for you in January. So I'm going to stop doing these webinars, and all the information is going to be on the website. But for the webinar people today, this is the last one I'm doing, which is going to be an extra $200 off. So it's going to be $597. This is going to be the lowest price going forward. And yeah, so if you want to sign up for it, I highly recommend that you do that. I have a code for you that if you sign up today, you're going to get that price for $597, and then after that, it's going to be $797 before the early bird price by November the 15th. One additional thing that I'm offering is a 2-week money back guarantee. So after 2 classes, if you feel this wasn't the right course for you, it's not the right fit, you can cancel. Any content that you already have, you'll get your full money back, and you can keep the content as well. So this is really my guarantee. I'm pretty sure that there's not going to be that many people that are going to be asking for a refund. It's just my guarantee that it's really good value, and you're going to get a lot out of this. Okay. So again, there's no risk. So here's the link for you to go directly to our course and sign up. And again, if you do it by tonight, I have this coupon code November 6th web. So NOV06 web in caps. That's valid until midnight tonight. So that's going to give you the $200 off if you go to the link suiteeditionspro.com/store. Keep in mind that once you implement this and discover the amazing results, you will see that it's a process that you can repeat over and over again. I feel like even if you did this once, you're going to end up saving $5,000-$6,000. So it's worth 10 times what it's cost, and then you can keep repeating it, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stick around and answer questions. We made it before 9. Awesome. For those of you who are not aware, there's a website from the government of Ontario. So if you go to this link here, there's a guide that's available from the Ontario government that covers a lot of the requirements for second suites. So things like room sizes, windows, fire separation, just overall design, space requirements. That's on that link there. It's a PDF. It's a really good document. It's about 20 pages, and it covers a lot of stuff. So I do recommend that if you don't already have that, go to that link and grab it. It's actually, the link is also on my 8-point checklist if you don't have that. Okay, so that's it for me. And feel free to stick around if you like to ask me any questions at all. Again, any questions you have about a specific project or any questions that you have in general for second suites, I'm going to be sticking around for as long as I need to be to answer the questions, okay? And thank you again for attending the webinar. And if you have to go, have a great night. And I do hope to see you on the training course starting in January.